And welcome back, guys, to the final round. My name is Jake, and this is going to be the big boxing, I guess the big boxing weekend review number one. I'll live out of order. I was supposed to do this first one after the first preview episode I did. I was supposed to do the second preview episode for this one, but we're going out of order, and it's here. Before we get into the huge boxing weekend, it was a big weekend for boxing and a great weekend for boxing. Didn't want to mention our other videos about UFC 318. Me and Isaiah sort of had our Isaiah. It's a little weird. We pretty much recorded our what's it called? Our 37th episode of our podcast, but it's kind of weird. We're not really sure how it's going right now. We might not continue the series. I don't know. But I'll give a full breakdown of the card. And UFC 318 did live up to the hype. I just want to go quickly into it real quick, and then we'll get into boxing. I won't go over any of the other fights. Just Dustin and Max had a great fight. Dustin Poirier is an absolute legend. He's had a hell of a career. And I was thinking about this, and I'll just mention this one quick point, and I'll get to the fight real quickly. I know that it was a close fight, and I'm so glad that it didn't go. Because Max hurt him in the first round, like, oh boy, here we go. And luckily, it didn't end that way. Dustin survived. He hurt him in round two really badly. And ended up going 5 rounds. It wasn't like a full, drag him out war. There were kind of spurts where it kind of faded in and out about that. And kind of fade. It would kind of fade and turn into that, and then fade out, and then be more of a technical fight. But it was still really, it was still entertaining overall, and certainly lived up to the legendary status of both guys. So after 5 rounds, Max won a unanimous decision. I thought that the judges were, unlike usual, dumb. I think all 3 of them gave Max round 2, even though I think that Dustin. Besides hurting him, I think Max might have won round anyway. But still, Dustin hurt him really badly, and I thought he easily won that round. So, but it's judging. It's terrible. It's always been crap. So, we'll get to that later with one of the boxing fights. Manny Pacquiao's fight against Mario Barrios. We'll get to that judging in a little bit, or later on. But it was overall a solid card. Isaiah, he's got a whole breakdown video. Please go watch that. He goes into great detail about the fight and the whole card itself. Just want to give a shout out to Dustin Poirier. I know that he, after 5 rounds, he thought he had done enough to win. He thought it should have been closer. I agree, it should have been 3-2. And I know he's disappointed, but to finish your career 30-10, he has the one no contest to Eddie Alvarez, but doesn't really count. He's had 40, I think 41 or 42 pro fights. He's had, I think 50 fights overall. And, I think including his amateur days. He's had a great career. And I'm glad that he's calling it now because it's clear he can still go toe to toe with Max and all these other guys. He went to the 5th round against Islam last year, and it was competitive. And I thought he was almost winning that fight before he got finished. So he can still fight with the best, but I'm really glad that he's making the decision, to call it quits before, as he said all week, before the sport retires him. And as someone who's a huge boxing guy like me, I've been in boxing almost my whole life. Obviously when I was fighting, but still, most of my life I've been around it. You see it so much in boxing, where you have a guy who really should retire, and he doesn't, and he keeps on going. Derek Chisora is one of those guys who he should stop fighting, but he keeps getting money fights in England and throughout the UK. That's why he keeps fighting. I'll get to this later on, but I actually don't hate the idea of Usyk fighting Derek Chisora, for his heavyweight titles. I actually don't hate that much, but still. So, just wanted to, give my quick, my thoughts on 318 real briefly, and now we'll get into boxing. So, as I said, UFC had a great weekend, and boxing had an awesome weekend. We had three, we had three kind of big marquee events. Obviously, this one Usyk Dubois 2 for the undisputed heavyweight championship of the world. This rematch of their fight of I think 2 years ago, in August of 2023. I'm pretty sure. And then you also had a pretty big fight night between the returning legend Manny Pacquiao and Mario Barrios for Barrios's, I think it was his WBA or WBC welterweight title. That card was good. This card was good too. And then you also had Jesse Bam Rodriguez. He fought in Texas against Fumalele Cafu. I'm sorry if I butchered his name like that pretty badly. So there were three overall pretty marquee events. All of them were really, really solid. We'll get to the other two later. But let's start off with a bang. We'll start with Usyk and Dubois. It was a solid event. Obviously, absolute packed house at Wembley Arena. I don't know how big they filled it, but it looked pretty full. It looked at least as many that were there for Dubois and Joshua, which was around 78,000. It was at least 70,000, probably more. Could be 80. I don't know. I know that when Joshua fought Klitschko, they filled it to like 88 or 89,000, pretty much 90,000 when you consider all the people working at at the fight. It's probably about 90,000. So this was a huge event, and this was. I'll say one thing about this. I think everyone in the UK, everyone put their faith in Dubois because the first fight was somewhat controversial. Obviously, everyone knows Dubois landed a body shot that was sort of low. It was kind of on the belt. It's close. It's not definitive. It's not it's not the same as Gervonta Davis versus Lamont Roach. That's a knockdown, but it wasn't from a foul, so it's different. But this is sort of similar in a way to other things you see, it was Andrew Galata versus Riddick Bowe, 1 or 2. It wasn't those kind of low blows where it was clear on the cup. It was pretty close to the bell. I don't know. I've watched it over and over. I can go back and forth on all the time. It doesn't really matter. It's in the past. Usyk went down. It was not ruled a knockdown. And Dubois was, if he got the knockdown, he would out of the cards, and he still got finished. In the 9th round, he still got finished. How's this damn thing going? All right, but yeah, he still got finished. So it's not like it was like a decision and he got robbed. It was a close fight. There's the whole mental thing about what happened. It's just viewed as a controversial fight, and for good reason, obviously. And that was kind of the main reason why Dubois had this fight booked. He had beaten Joshua. If you think about it, he probably still would have gotten this fight because and the whole reason why this was for undisputed is when Usyk beat Fury the first time, he had all the belts. He became the first I think the first truly undisputed champion since Lennox Lewis in 2003 or 4, something like that. That was the last time we had a true undisputed unified champion. Pretty much about 20 years, 2 decades. Now Klitschko for years had most of the titles. He never had the WBC. He did fight for a couple times, but still, even though he never had that, he was still recognized as the window champion, for a number of years. But he was never truly undisputed, and I think that was it's not a stain on Klitschko's legacy because his brother Vitaly, he held the WBC title for a number of years as well. So I guess together both brothers were undisputed as a family, which is true. But in the recent years, obviously Joshua, he beat Klitschko to get most of the titles, and then Fury and Wilder, they had their trilogy for the WBC. And only no championship because Fury had beaten, Klitschko and got. So by the time you get to Fury, uh, this is the first Fury fight with Usyk. He had just beat Joshua. He had beat Joshua the first time and then beat him again. Both times very, very soundly. The first fight, I thought that the second fight, I thought that Joshua actually fought a lot better. The first fight, he looked absolutely terrible. The second fight, he actually looked pretty good. He still lost both fights, though, very convincingly. And so pretty much after that, pretty much Usyk was in the same position that Joshua was in after he beat Klitschko the first time. He had most of the belts, or soon to get the rest. I believe Usyk. I don't know if he. I'm trying to look if he might have. Did he have a fight in between? I'm trying to look if he had a fight in between. So he beat Anthony Joshua for three of the four major ones, and then he beat Daniel Dubois, which is actually in Poland. I forgot about that. Then he had two decisions over Tyson Fury, which he had, so after the first fight, he wins by split decision, which really should have been stopped in the ninth round. It should have been stopped because Fury was out on his feet. He was done. It should have been stopped. I know why the ref stepped in to stop it because it's Fury, and I think Fury had all the promotion behind him. He's Tyson Fury and all this stuff, the Gypsy King. It's okay what the ref did. I just don't like it. It was perfectly plausible, to give him the standing 8 count. I just don't like it. I don't think standing 8 counts should be allowed in high-profile fights. I completely hate that. And I know I'm not alone in that. Many boxing people agree with me on that. It's pretty ridiculous. But everyone kind of agrees, it's Fury, fine, give him one. I thought that Usyk won that fight a lot more convincingly than Split, honestly. But, and that fight, he gained all 4 or 5 of the major world titles. And then what happened was, the IBF, being who they are, they stripped Usyk of the IBF title because instead of fighting their mandatory guy who, I don't think it was Dubois at the time. It might have been I'm not sure who his mandatory was at the time when he fought Fury for the second time. So, and what ended up happening was this is very similar to Ali. I want to shout out my main man Rummy's Corner. He was actually on the Ring Magazine YouTube channel doing a full breakdown of this fight. So I'm just gonna say his breakdown is gonna be way better than mine. So you should definitely still watch this, but afterwards, please go watch Rummy's Corner on the Ring Magazine channel. It's not on his channel; it's just on the Ring Magazine, but it's really good. I just put it on and I heard Rummy's voice. I'm like, oh, wait a minute, that's Rummy. And I was like, let's go. So shout out to him for getting, shout out to him for going big time. Because he was, he's for me as a boxing lover, as a huge boxing fan, he's always been big time to me. But this put him really, really big time. So shout out to Rummy for that one. But so even though he beat Fury again, he didn't have the IBF. Dubois won the IBF, and then obviously had his big one against Anthony Joshua, his 5th round destruction, and pretty much sets up this fight with Usyk, and the fight happens, and this was a pretty good fight. I'll get to it in a second. I don't want to go over the rest of the card, but I'm going to this fight. Dubois was really kind of acting not immature, but he was, you could tell he was trying to create drama, trying to get Usyk's head, which I don't know why he did, because Fury couldn't get Usyk's head, Joshua couldn't get Usyk's head, Der Tuzora, who gets in a lot of guys' heads, he couldn't get in his head. Tony Bellew years ago couldn't get in his head. You can't get in his head because he doesn't speak English that well, and even though he's getting better at it. He's, there was a time when the war in Ukraine started that he was in Ukraine fighting. This guy is a soldier and a warrior. He loves his country, and he's honestly one of the best boxers to ever live. And I have no problem saying that whatsoever. He's one of the best boxers to ever live. I consider him, even before this fight, I consider him this, but especially after. I think, like me, and it's just my opinion, I think that Oleksandr Usyk is one of the 5 best heavyweights to ever live. I'm not sure where I'd rank him. I think it's obvious. I have Ali 1, maybe Tyson 2, but he's in that top 5, especially with his resume. He's up there with the likes of Lennox and Ali. He just is. He just is, man. Him, Foreman, I'm not sure if I'm solid on my top 5. All I know is that Usyk's in it. He's in it, or has heavy consideration for it. So, yeah. So it was. Let's just go back to the card. We'll start the start of the card. Obviously, Badam Hamed, he had a good win. Nasha Garuli, he had a good win. Just trying to see. Here we go. Yeah, he's 2-0. Good Georgia boy fighter. Daniel. Here we go. Solomon Dakris. This was he fought Vladislav Sarenko. If you go to the his own boxing YouTube channel, it says "What an upset" when they show the fight highlights for this fight. I don't know why it was an upset, because Dakris was the local guy from UK, and local guy from UK is almost always what is it, world level? He's not, but at this point, I mean, I don't know why they he was 9-1 going into it. He's a good fighter, but he was viewed Sarenko was 22-0 from Ukraine, but I've looked at his record and I haven't seen anybody remotely decent on that record. Pretty much everyone else on that record just meh. So he lost by decision, to Solomon Dakris. Cool, don't care. Apparently, his own boxing and the Sky Sports guys thought it was a massive upset. I think they're looking at if you're looking just at the record, okay, upset. Looking at the resumes, pretty similar actually. And then Daniel Lapin defeated Lewis Edmondson by majority decision. This was a fight at 175. Both guys were 11-0. I think this was actually a pretty solid fight, man. Lewis Edmondson's a good fighter. He was 11-0, but he's 29. He was, for a domestic kind of fringe guy. Lapin's 28, but he's been progressing. He's now 12-0. He's only got 4 knockouts. He is a good fighter. He's long. He's rangy. But he did struggle against Edmondson, who I think is a solid fighter, but is nowhere near even contender level, let alone world level. So I think that Lapin has a lot to work on if he wants to progress any further. And then he had former cruiserweight champion Lawrence Okoli. He took on former cruiserweight, I'm a fellow cruiserweight champion in Kevin Lorena. Lorena, for real hardcore boxing fans, Kevin Lorena was a guy for years and years. He was the IBL cruiserweight champion, and he never had any real motivations to ever unify. He won the title, and I believe he won the title, and pretty much every single one of his fights took place in South Africa, and and pretty much all at the Empress Palace. And he's a good fighter. He lost to Johnny Muller, who's a mediocre kind of mid-level guy. Lost to him years ago, and he kept on fighting decent guys. He won the vacant cruiserweight title in 2017 and defended it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I think 5 times. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. He 6 defenses, and he never really fought anyone mediocre. The only guy who I think was any sort of good that he fought at that time was probably Sefer Seferi. He was that guy, an Albanian fighter who he fought Tyson Fury in one of his 2 comeback fights after, before he fought Wilder for the first time in 2018. Lorena, and then I was trying to think. And then I think in 2020 he decided to go up to heavyweight. He actually had a fight against Bogdag Danu, who isn't a great fighter, but is a solid guy. He got a good win over him. But really, he never fought anyone great. Uh, he had a good he had a good win over Marius Walk, who was a solid heavyweight contender for a number of years. But then he fought Daniel Dubois in Tottenham in 2022, and it was actually a really crazy fight. He knocked it was kind of funny. He knocked Dubois down 3 times in the first round. And I'll say one thing about Dubois. He is a solid fighter. We'll get to this in a little bit, but he's not a guy that is an absolute dominant world champion fighter. He's good. He's got skill, and I think he was so locked in to beat AJ, and they clearly had some animosity going. That I think he was able to kind of motivate himself. Also, AJ was in no way the same as he was before. I think he was completely faded that night and had no motivation to win that fight. But that's a different story for a different time about the whole event. So yeah, Moreno then got stopped by Dubois in round 3, and that was his second pro loss. And then he had a couple decent, mediocre fights back in South Africa. He then fought Justice Huni, who's an up-and-coming fighter, who just had was 12-0 before losing to Fabio Worley in his last fight, which was actually a pretty solid. It wasn't a war, but he was actually dominating. He was actually really dominating Fabio Worley, and all of a sudden he just decided to win, and he won. It was actually really good. But he's a solid fighter, so he beat him by decision, and then he went back to South Africa, had another win. So he came into this fight 31-3. And it's kind of funny. His nickname is the KO Kid. He's only got 15 knockouts on his record. He's a good fighter, solid. At cruiserweight, he was a lot more lean. If you watched the fight, you saw Lorena was like short and really beefy, and I think he has gained some power in that. He's also lost a lot of his speed and mobility. That made him, back when he was IBO cruiserweight champion, I thought he was gonna he was gonna fight Maris Briedis and Doctoros. I thought he was gonna fight all those guys and win. I was like, man, don't sleep on Kevin Lorena, and he never fought them for I think a good reason, which I don't think he would have beat him. I'm looking back at it now, but he's a solid fighter, and I came to this fight expecting Lawrence to finish him, and he didn't. And McCauley still looked good, and he did box well. Lorena did have his moments. The judges scored it really lopsidedly for Okolie. Lorena didn't even win one round on 2 of the cards. I think that's absolutely ridiculous. I think that's freaking terrible. I still had, I'm pretty sure when I was watching it, definitely had Okolie winning the fight, probably like 7-3 or 8-2. But to give Lorena no rounds, that's ridiculous. I mean, one just giving 1 round, that's still pretty bad. It was clear that Lawrence won the fight, but I mean, to give a former champion like Kevin Lorena no rounds, I mean, that's, and he was pretty inactive for 5 or 6 rounds, but there were a couple spots he had success in. Maybe I'm kind of staying on a flag for him because I used to like him a lot, but Lawrence Cody got a good win. He's a guy who people say, that he could be like he could be a little like Evander Holyfield and come up after cruiserweight and dominate. He's not going to be that. First of all, he never unified cruiserweight. That's one thing. 2, he's not that offensively viable as Holyfield ever was, really. Even in his later years. And I do think he's not really been overly tested against his super world-class opponent. Lorena's probably the best opponent he's, in terms of record and resume, that he's probably fought in. And he looked good, but he looked good. He won the fight easily, but he didn't, if he was going to make a statement, he should have finished Kevin Lorena. He didn't, so. And then we have the heavyweight championship of the world. Everyone has probably talked about this fight a bunch since, so I won't, harp on it too much. Just wanted to say that there was a lot, obviously going in. Dubois tried Usyk's head. He pushed him at the press conference. He was talking shit about him in all these interviews. He's like, yeah, there's nothing between us. Just, we have nothing in common, and then someone asked him, "What differences? Everything. My view, speed, power, and he was, and I'm not blaming Frank Warren, but Frank Warren clearly blew up his head with constantly saying, "Hey, you should have won that first fight. That was bullshit. You're gonna beat him this time." And obviously, as his promoter and and a guy who's been supporting him for a while, it makes sense that Frank Warren would would try to help his guy out like that. But I'll give Frank Warren credit for for because it would have been easy for him to give Dubois a couple easier fights and defend his IBF title. That's what Kevin Lorena did. He never tried to unify cruiserweight. Never even attempted it, and it was fine defending in South Africa. I'm sure because it's heavyweight. I'm sure that Dubois would have gotten some slack for not fighting Usyk and the top guys, but Frank Warren is good on that. And he found the Usyk, and fight started out pretty quick. Dubois came out right away, and he came out so fast round one. And even though he was doing a little bit well, Usyk was already finding his timing perfectly. When you guys do go watch Remy's video on Ring Magazine, he breaks it down way better than I ever could. So I'm not going to try to break it down in super depth like he did. But Dubois started really fast. He wasn't really landing much. Every time he would kind of step into range, Usyk would pop him with counters, hit him with a good jab. And at 38, Usyk was moving as better as he was moving as great as he's really ever moved, especially at heavyweight. And he looked great, man. And this was now. I don't think that Dubois came in 100% ready. I'm sure he felt ready. I'm sure he was thinking 100% ready, but he did not. The way he fought, he didn't look like he was kind of stepping forward the whole time and trying to pressure Usyk. And we've seen guys do that. Tony Bellew tried it. Chisora tried it. Fury tried it at times. When you pressure Usyk, he's going to fall back and move, and he's going to step to his pivot, step to his angles, and he's going to fire counters, and he's going to catch you. Round 3, he caught Dubois some good shots. In the middle of round 3, Dubois come, good right. Dubois was, he was having some success here and there. But for the most part, he was losing pretty, distinctively. And then in round 4, Dubois caught him early. He then hit Usyk again. I think round 4 was probably the only round that Dubois won. Not round 3. It didn't really matter because in round 5, Dubois, even though he was getting countered pretty well, and he was getting tagged by some shots, which I think those sharp counters that Usyk landed throughout the first 4 rounds definitely had an effect in terms of the first knockdown, because you got Usyk in the corner. Usyk stepped back and from over the top right, caught Usyk. It got Dubois right on top of the, right above the ear. It wasn't a hard shot. It was kind of like a bang shot. Yeah, it was heavy hard, but but he kind of threw it like bang over the top, and Dubois went down, and you could tell that that his balance was all gone. He beat the count. Clearly didn't look good. Usyk kind of stepped, threw a right, threw a couple shots, and then kind of stepped back and threw an absolute left as kind of Dubois kind of swung back to his. As he kind of swung back to his weak side, Usyk kind of unloaded this big left hook and dropped Dubois out, and Dubois was done. He got up, but he was over, and the ref called it. I mean, it was, just looking at Dubois' face, he was like, he was done, and Usyk had a fit, and Usyk won my 5th round knockout. It was honestly, everyone was saying that if this fight went the distance, Usyk would win. But everyone, including guys like Lennox Lewis, was saying if it's going to end inside the distance, it's going to be Dubois. Not the case. Usyk silenced all that, and he is now clearly the best heavyweight in the world. I don't know what's next. I'm sure I'll make some boxing videos about that in the future, about who Usyk should get. Really, I think that it's pretty clear. The guy who should be next is Joseph Parker. He's earned his way back. He's fought everybody. Give him Joseph Parker. And he was respectful. He went in there and talked to Usyk, and he's like, I'm next. Usyk says, man, you need time to rest. rest my family. And Joe's brother, all right, go rest your family. You know, great job with the win. And he was respectful because that's who Joseph Parker is. He wants to win. He's a competitor, but he's respectful because he's a Kiwi, and most of them are like that. So that's a fight that I actually would love to see because I think if anyone, in terms of who I think could win, do I think that Parker has a chance to win? Not really. But I do feel like he would try to box with Usyk. And I think if you try to box with Usyk, you're going to probably lose, but you will survive the distance. I think that Parker could 100% survive a fight with Usyk. He survived against Joshua. He beat Wilder. He survived against a bunch of top guys. There's talk about Fury and Joshua. I'm a Fury theory. If you give him a third Fury fight, I think that's only because Frank Warren's mad and he wants revenge so badly. A fight between him and Derek Chisora, since they're friends, I don't mind it. It won't be that exciting. I'm sure Usyk will just kind of carry him for 12 rounds, but still. The Joshua fight makes 0 sense. 0 sense. Joshua got knocked out by Dubois. Dubois got knocked out by Usyk. It makes 0 sense. But I won't put anything. I won't put anything past boxing. And also, I don't think Eddie Hearn's going to let Joshua fight Usyk. That's not going to happen. But it should be Joseph Parker. Magit Kabayel is someone who's out there. Fabio Wardley, he's out there too. I think Kabayel, I want to see Magit Kabayel fight someone like Dubois or someone who's just below the Superclass champion level before I see Kabayel fight Usyk. But he's there. Fabio Wardley's kind of there. I don't think he has a chance right now, but he's also there too. So there's a bunch of names that I don't think he'll float up. I'm sure Usyk will take his time. He'll rest and he'll be fine. So that was Usyk and Dubois too. It was a solid event. Okay, so we're back, guys. Let's move on to the second big boxing event over this weekend. Manny Pacquiao's return against Mario Barrios. Pretty crazy that that Manny's back. I mean, came in this fight 62, 8-2. The guy is crazy. He's 46 years old. 70. I think this was his 73rd pro fight. That's crazy. 73. He's been fighting since, I believe, 1995. He's been fighting since 1995, man. And I think he was, 18, 17, only 16 years old. He's fighting for years, dude. He's fought everybody for years and years and years. He fought Merrick Morales, Marco Antonio Barrera. He fought, Juan Manuel Marquez. He fought everybody. Floyd. David Diaz, Octa De La Hoya, Ricky Hatton, Miguel Cotto, Joshua Clottey, Antonio Margarito, Shane Mosley, Tim Bradley. He won that fight, by the way. Brandon Rios, Chris Algieri, Jesse Vargas. I mean, he fought everybody. He fought Jeff Horn, Lucas Matisse, Adrian Broner, Keith Thurman, Yordenis Ugas. And that's just kind of recently, And it had been about 4 years because he was sort of having his, he lost to Jeff Horn, which was, fight. He then beat Lucas Matisse, Lucas Matisse in 2018. Then he beat Adrian Broner in Las Vegas 2019, which was a fight where Broner might beat him. No, you lost easily. And then he had the fight against Keith Thurman, which was a fight he was supposed to lose. He turned back the clock, knocked down Thurman in round 1, and beat him by decision, which was awesome. I don't know how that was split. I don't know what judge. Glenn Feldman scored that for Keith Thurman. Glenn Feldman, you suck. You suck, man. You suck. So, but yeah, it was, and then he fought Yordenis Ugas. It was really a pretty close fight. He lost that by decision. That was 4 years ago. Well, it was pretty much 4 years ago. 4 years ago, in 2021, when Pacquiao was 42. He hasn't been fighting. He's been, he's been doing politics in the Philippines, and he decided to come back. I haven't really read why he came back. I'm assuming it's for politics, for money. Maybe for I'll tell you what, it's not. It's not for legacy. His legacy is cemented. He isn't, it. The fact that I think he won this fight does it adds to his legacy. It doesn't harm it though. It doesn't. His legacy is already cemented. Nothing could change his legacy as one of the greatest fighters ever lived. Yeah, Prime Pacquiao is one of the greatest fighters of all time, in my opinion. Um, and he fought a guy Mario Barrios who is a solid guy. Came with this fight record of 29-2-2, or sorry, 29-2-1. You know he he had been a solid fighter for a number of years. Hadn't really been great. Was mostly fighting at he was he started his career at junior lightweight. Went to lightweight for a little bit. Sort of found a home at super welterweight. Was pretty good. He got his first big fight against Tank Davis in 2021. He lost that by 11 for a knockout. He fought pretty well considering, but he got knocked out. Then lost to Keith Thurman in his next fight by unanimous. I feel like it was the last time that Keith Thurman fought. No, he's actually been fighting recently. He just beat Brock Jarvis. I don't. Yeah, Keith Thurman's Keith Thurman. He's all right, whatever. But yeah, I think it's funny. Yeah, Keith Thurman hasn't fought once since then. Yeah, so after that, he went and sort of kind of found out a welterweight, had a good win, and then beat Uranda Zugas, beat him by decision. He then defeated Fabian Maidana. Of course, I don't know if he's a brother or a cousin, but he is related. He is definitely related to Marcos Maidana, one of the great fighters of the 2010s. And then he, in his last fight, he fought a guy, Abel Ramos, who was a solid guy, 28-6-2, solid Mexican fighter. This is on the undercard of Jake Paul and Mike Tyson at A&T, at the big, well, I was going to call it A&T Stadium, but all sports fans know it's really Jerry's World. Or Jerry World or Jerry's World. That's what it should be called. It's Jerry World. It's Jerry Jones World. It's Jerry World. That's what it is. And it was a close fight, man. Ramos was down in round 1, but he dropped Barrios round 6. Judges scored a split draw, and it was kind of funny. I think it's one of it's happened before, but it's been a while since I'm a reigning champion, and it's funny because after he beat Fabian Maidana, he was declared. He was made the WBC welterweight champion before the fight, so he was defending his first time against Ramos. Had the draw, and then he fought Pacquiao, and then had a draw. So he's now. It's not viewed as a successful defense. You have to win the fight to have a successful defense. He still retains his title, but it's 2 back-to-back draws. Not a good look for Barrios. But even with all that, I still thought Barrios was going to win because I didn't know which Pacquiao we're going to see. And at his best, I think Barrios is he is one of those guys who I think is a solid titleist. You know how like divisions have those guys. Like, I think, he's on the level of a Keith Thurman, someone who could be a decent titleist, and he lost to Keith Thurman, which means that I think he's a little below that, where he is a solid world title fighter, but it's been clear he can't beat the best, more guys who have world-class skill. He hasn't beat any sort of, his best win, was Uranda Zugas, and yeah, he won that fight easily, but whereas Zugas is a guy who's been very inconsistent, in his own career. So for Barrios, he's a solid fighter, but he's, Abel Ramos is a solid guy, but if you're going to draw against him, you're unfortunately nothing too special. And even with all that, I still thought Pacquiao was going to lose this fight. But he's 46, and he came back, and he looked pretty much the same as he looked against Keith Thurman. I'm a little slower. He didn't have as much spurts, but I thought he won this fight. I thought he won this fight clearly. Two judges had it 114, 114. I agree with Max DeLuca because he had it 150, 113. That's what I had it for Pacquiao. I actually might even give him Pacquiao around 7, so I think I might have given it to him 160, 112. But I thought he won this fight. At 46 years old, he went with a guy who isn't anywhere near pound for pound, but, you know, and I wouldn't even say that Barrios is a legitimate world titleist, but he holds a title, and he's a solid, he's a solid title fighter. You know, the best way to compare him is to say he is similar to someone. I was gonna say Sean Porter, but I think Sean Porter would destroy him in his prime. Honestly, that's my opinion. But he's a solid guy. A solid guy. I'm gonna stop trying to give him a comparison, but he's a solid fighter who is a world titleist. And Pacquiao beat him, and I saw afterwards that Jim Gray was like, "I think Manny won," and I think Manny won too. At 46, he fought for a world title and should have won. But it was really great to see it though, because even though he got the draw or whatever, the fact that he went with a guy who is 33, but a guy who's arguably in the prime of his career, a solid fighter who has a legitimate world title, who is not a knockout guy but has some good pop, and Pacquiao went in there and fought to the distance and arguably should have won the fight. That's crazy. Manny Pacquiao is the best. He's awesome. He's awesome, dude. And it was a great fight. Just go over the rest of the card. I'm Gary Russell Jr. He got back in the win column. I've always liked Gary Russell. Slick boxer. He's had his setbacks, but he's still really, really good. He's been a solid fighter almost his whole career. He had it was kind of funny. Obviously his big loss was to Vasily Lomachenko, which was what it was, but he fought pretty well in that, considering everything. Mark Magsayo, who is who's a pretty solid, who's one of the best guys from the Philippines right now. He's the one that beat Gary Russell Jr. His second loss, and actually good. So Gary Russell Jr. he defeated Hugo Castaneda by 10th round TKO. Marcial beat Bernard Joseph by 3rd round TKO. Magsayo beat Jorge Mata by decision. David Picasso, I think he's a good fighter. What is his record? He is one of your typical Mexican record patters. His record's 32-0-1, which means he either could be Canelo, and because he's 24 years old, and he's doing his out. And this is what many Mexican fighters do. They're super active and they fight so often, but they usually fight taxi drivers. And guys say, pretty much they fight cab drivers, pretty much. And he got a decision win over Kinosuke Kameda. And then here we go. Pitbull Cruz, Isaac Cruz, Pitbull Cruz. I gotta say, I love Pitbull Cruz. He's awesome. He won by unanimous decision over Momar Gomez. Good for him. Brandon Figueroa defeated Joel Gonzalez by unanimous decision. Joel Gonzalez he's a mad fighter. He's pretty good though. Brandon Figueroa is a solid guy. He is he's a really solid guy who fights at what weight does he fight at? What's his weight? What class does he fight at? Featherweight. Yeah, he's a good fighter, man. He is a win over Magsayo. Lost to Stephen Fulton, but he's a good fighter. Um, um, he beat Luis Neri. Good fight. Who was he also beaten? Oh yeah, he lost to Stephen Fulton again. Fulton was pretty good. 23-1. Yeah, and this was a good win for Brandon Figueroa. And then this next fight was a fight it was for the WBC super. It was for the WBC Super Welterweight Championship. Damn it, man, damn it. Between Sebastian Fundora and Tim Tszyu, the son of Costa Tszyu. Man, I've been a Tim Tszyu fan for a number of years, and I love him, dude. And I honestly, he's a good fighter. And when he first lost to Sebastian Fundora in 2024, it was a close fight. I thought he won it. Split decision. He had just won his WBO welterweight title. He then fought Fundora for unification. He lost. Really close fight. I thought he won. Really, really close. He then tried to win the IBF super welterweight title against Bakram Murtazaliev, and he lost. That was actually Bakram's last fight, actually. I went home. I'm not that Joseph Spencer, and and then got back and fought Fundora. It's got funny for Fundora. He himself was a good fighter. He went and he's been fighting good fighters. He beat Sergio Garcia, who was a long time undefeated guy. European champion, defeated him. Who's Jorge Cota. He's been fighting solid guys for a number of years. He beat the crap out of Erickson Lubin, who was supposed to be this great, awesome fighter. Which he's a good fighter, Erickson Lubin, but he was always kind of a bit of a hype job, in my opinion. And then he had his first loss against Brian Mendoza in 2023, and then it's funny. Right after that, he got a world title fight against Tim Tszyu and won. Which I personally don't think he should have gotten, but he got it, and he proved himself. He fought good against Tim Tszyu. He then beat Cordell Booker in a good fight, and defended both his titles. He then, I think he vacated the WBO. I'm pretty sure he vacated that. That's actually going to be fought for between Xander Zayas, who's a good fighter. Xander Zayas is fighting Jorge Perez for that title. Madison Square Garden, actually. Oh, I think that's a top ranked card. Not surprised. But no, yeah. And this fight was not this. Now I'll say this about Tim Tszyu. He is a solid guy, but he's in the fights he's won. He's been in some really hard wars, and he took a lot of hits in the first fight, and he got his ass kicked against Murtazaliev. He got finished in the third round. He was down 3 times in round 2. In round 3, it was over. He was done. He got destroyed, and I don't think he recovered from that. And he shouldn't have been in there because that was only 6 months after the fight with Fundora, which was a bloodbath in itself. He should not have got that fight, and I don't think he really recovered. And it was bad. He got blown out, and he was down quick in round 1, and he just never recovered. And I love Tim Tszyu. I was hoping he beat Fundora the first time, and I was convinced he was going to beat Fundora this time. I think he's going to get back. He had the loss. He's coming back. He looks really good against Spencer. He's going to move and box, and he's going to start hammering him. And yeah, Fundora beat the shit out of him. And Fundora is a very tall, rangy guy, but he's got pretty good power for a twin type guy. He's got pretty good power, man. And he went in there and beat the shit out of Tszyu. Finished him after round 7, and I already talked about Manny Pacquiao versus Mario Barrios. I don't know where you go with Manny Pacquiao. For Mario Barrios, either they'll have a rematch or Barrios will fight somebody mid-level like Abel Ramos. He'll probably lose or he'll barely win by decision. But I don't think Barrios has any chance of, if this division does unify, he's not going to be the guy to unify. That's for sure. Manny Pacquiao, he can still compete with mid-level contender guys. This proved it, and he can beat them at 46 years old. I think he was coming back for money. I'm glad he got paid. I'm sure it was a lot of money, and but for the sake of your overall health, Manny, I think you should stop fighting. And honestly, he didn't really even get hit that much. He got hit a little bit, but not like crazy. And he boxed well for a 46-year-old guy, man. He turned back the clock and looked great. Unfortunately, because it's boxing, I always say this, because it's boxing, it was a draw. It's boxing for you. And that's the sad part about it. Freaking, and I always feel like it's always at a PBC or Top Rank event where it's always bad judging. Yeah, you see it in the zone, but not as much. But yes, it was a solid event. I'm just gonna look up. There we go. What? Sorry, guys. I'm trying to find. Oh my god. I'm trying to find. I'm struck. Hold on. Sorry, I was trying to pull up. I was trying to pull up Jesse Rodriguez because I want to talk about his fight. There we go, Jesse Bam Rodriguez. Quickly going to mention him, real quickly here. All right, we're back, guys. Let's talk about Jesse Rodriguez. So he fought Fumolele Kafu to unify these super flyweight titles. Jesse Rodriguez is someone that he's 25 years old, and he's already a guy who I think really deserves some pound recognition. He's awesome, and he's young, he's fast, he's powerful, he's got good speed and power. He's really good. He's 22-0, 15 knockouts. This was a good fight. Now, he really had his coming out party when he fought Carlos Cuadras, who was, I think, 39-4-1. They fought for the WBC Super Flyweight title, which was vacant. He won that fight by decision. He had a couple good defenses. He then went down in weight to flyweight. He beat Christian Hernandez, and he won the WBO flyweight title. He then fought Sonny Edwards, who was a solid guy, 20-0. He beat the crap out of Sonny Edwards. He then gained the IBF flyweight title. He then decided to go back up. He fought, and in the biggest fight of his career, and he fought one of the, in my opinion, one of the best lower weight fighters of recent time, Juan Francisco Estrada, who came to the fight 44-3. Estrada's a good fighter, man. He's really, really solid. He had his, his really back and forth wars with Roman Chocolatito Gonzalez. If you guys don't, I am going to talk about Chocolatito. I think his career is over. I am going to do a video on him. He is a Central American legend. He is awesome. Chocolatito is one of the best. In my opinion, I think he's one of the best low-weight fighters ever lived. But I'll get into that a separate time. But going to this fight, he had come off a win over Chocolatito. He had fought 2 years, Estrada. And this was a really good fight. I think Rodriguez, it was 23-24 time, was last year. And he went in there. Now, Randy Estrada was 33-34. He had fought 2 years. Bunch of stuff, so, some injuries, whatever. He beat the crap out of him. And, yeah, he was down round four. Estrada, he got him down in round six, but then he caught him a beautiful body shot. He was counted out. Sorry, he was counted out in round seven. And then he beat Pedro Guevara, who was who's another guy whose record 42-4-1 was really good. And then he and before this fight, he actually before this fight. So this fight was a true unification fight. He fought Fumalele Cafu, who himself, I believe, was 11-0-3. Three draws. That's never great, but he himself is a pretty good fighter. He won the WBO title over Kosei Tanaka, who himself is actually a good fighter. So it was impressive that it was actually a huge upset for him to beat Kosei Tanaka, which was really who, it was really who Bam was supposed to be fighting. Was supposed to be Bam versus Tanaka, but Cafu won the title by split decision. So he fought Cafu, and this fight was really good. I thought that early on Cafu gave him trouble. He was boxing really well. He was using his jab well. Jesse really couldn't find the range. There were moments that he had some, was moments, that he had some big success. Round three, round six, he hurt Cafu with a really good body shot. Round eight was a good slugging round for both guys. It was a good fight. It was a solid fight. Jesse, he looked good, but he had some not struggles, but I think if we look at what the scores had it, I think they had it. I don't know what the. Yeah, so in terms of, most people did have most of the rounds for Jesse Rodriguez, but Cafu, he had some success in round three, round six, round eight. He had some success in round five was, I think, was around the he. It was probably the only round that I give him. I'd say round four or round five. It's a swing round. It's pretty close. But Jesse still fought really well, and he finished him with a beautiful sequence in round. Where's the thing? Here we go. Let me get my head out of the way here. Moves out. Boom. So Jesse, there we go. So this was kind of the finish sequence. He was, got him in the corner here, caught him with the left hook, bang, bang, bunch of shots. And Cafu went down, and the ref just called it. And, actually, he didn't go down fully. He was sort of on his way down, and Cafu's corner threw in the towel. And it was a solid win from Jesse Rodriguez. He looked really good. He went through some fire at times. And it's funny, before this fight was scheduled, he was already scheduled to fight on the huge Riyadh season card in November 22nd. Which I will go over. It's going to be a massive card. And he's going to fight Fernando Martinez, who himself is 18-0. He himself is a solid fighter from Argentina. He is 34, and he's a solid guy. He's beaten some good guys though. He beat Jordan Alcanzas. He beat Kazuo Ioka. He's a good fighter. He was the IBF Super Flyweight champion for for about 2 or 3 years. Was really good. But he hasn't, he's good, but he hasn't fought Jesse Rodriguez. I think, and to be honest, I really like the fact that Eddie Hearn is getting behind Jesse Rodriguez. He saw him fight when he fought Estrada and said, "Oh, this kid's freaking good." And I think if he sticks with Eddie Hearn and they manage him well, and everyone was saying, "Oh man, this is really not fair to Cafu that he's," because it was scheduled already before this fight. It was like 2 weeks ago. He signed a fight, and now in MMA UFC you almost never see that. Sometimes in amateur, but you usually never will see that at this level. You sort of see it in boxing at the middle level. You don't see it a lot at world level, but you do see it sometimes. This is one of the cases where I think Sheikh Turkey just really wanted to get Bam. I think he wanted to get him on this card badly, and he got him on this card. And this was 2 weeks before the fight with Cafu. and everyone was saying this is not fair to Cafu. And Cafu spoke about it. The press release like, yeah, this is what it is. I'm going to play spoiler, but I'm going to do my best. And it was this was a solid fight. I'll give Cafu credit. Most people thought he'd be out in round 4 or 5. He survived to round 10. I'll give him credit. He was a lot tougher than people give him credit for. So, was a solid win. Very solid win for Jesse Rodriguez. He is now, he's now 22-0. 15 knockouts. He is good, man. Jesse Bam Rodriguez, he's good, and he's slowly making his way up the pound for pound. I probably wouldn't put him anywhere near 1 right now. I do intend to make a pound for pound list. I was gonna make it sooner, like now. I think I'm gonna wait till after Canelo Crawford, because at that point, then we'll really know who's the best in the world. Because as much as I love Usyk, I do think he has a legitimate claim to be the best pound for pound fighter in the world, since he was undisputed at cruiserweight, undisputed at heavyweight, was forced to vacate, and then undisputed again. He's a 3-time undisputed champion, and he hasn't lost a fight yet. So, I think he has serious consideration for being the best fighter in the world. But as much as I love him, I think the winner of, especially if it's Bud, especially if Terrence, if he can beat Canelo, I think, at that point, you really can't deny him. He's going to be the best fighter in the world. He should be. He should be anyway, but if he does that, I mean, we'll see. Canelo too. If he does beat Bud Crawford, I might still put Usyk 1 because of Canelo's age, sort of, but still. But as you can see, I'm very excited for all the boxing that happened. It was awesome fights. Jesse Rodriguez, he looked great. Manny Pacquiao at 46 looked pretty damn good for a 46-year-old fighter, man, who's had like 70-something fights. It looked pretty good. It wasn't his world beater, but it was against a mid-level contender guy. He can still fight at 46. And then you have Oleksandr Usyk, obviously, once again, destroying a British heavyweight and dominating. And that's going to do it for the big boxing weekend review number 1. Stay tuned for more stuff this week. Probably going to get a video, some more fighter profiles coming out. I want to just keep pushing, as many fighter profiles as I can. I might even do Chocolatito this week. I'm gonna do some research to make sure he's done fighting, because my whole thing with the fighter profiles is I don't really want to do them unless I know the fighter is done, because I'll do fighter profiles on Canelo and Terrence Crawford since it's such a massive fight, but my fighter profiles are for the most part going to be on guys who are not fighting anymore, and a bunch of legends and stuff like that. So that's going to do it, guys. My name is Jake, and this has been the Big Boxing Weekend Review number 1. See you guys.